The nice thing about startups, and this can be very early stage or even up to Series A or B, is they haven't really like grown up yet. They're still just scrapping, and they kind of know they're scrapping, and so they don't have all of their workflows in place. And you're not going to get dropped into a sea of like Slack channels and email threads and stuff like that, and different pieces of software. And so for me, working with a startup is super easy. I more or less can always just jump in, go through my process from God, I can't go through my
Oh, man.
process from
I'm not gonna react at all when you say it. So
go through my process from A to Z, and actually, I just said that the American way, Z, because we say
oh
Z.
yeah,
But
that's
yeah.
right. That's right.
Anyways, yeah, you can go through your process from A to Z, no problem, because they don't really have anything competing with you. Whereas with enterprise clients, I mean, it can seem really simple when you're kind of going through the negotiation phase. You're just speaking to one person, and they're like, "Yeah, it's just going to be you, me, and this other guy," and that's like, "Okay, perfect." And then the proposal gets signed, they pay you the money, and then it's time to onboard. And it's like, okay, so here is like 16 folders with tons of folders within them of all of our resources. They're not organized in any specific way, so go ahead and go through them your own way. We're going to invite you to Slack because we only work in Slack, and we'll get you into these 10 channels that you're going to be a part of. And so the review process, in order to get something approved, like I'm going to have to see it, and then I got to get to my boss and their team as well because they're going to have some say as well. And then that's why you need to charge more, because it almost always spirals out of control. I've had very few instances where it doesn't. And it's not because they're bad people or they're liars or anything like that. They're not being dishonest. It's just the way enterprise companies go.
Politics. It's the
Yeah.
politics of it, and that's the biggest thing is you're dealing with more stakeholders. Those stakeholders might not be aligned. Like I always make it sort of my business to constantly check in on, if I know that my client has some stakeholder who can kind of torpedo anything that I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of always anticipating, what's the objection that the, head of customer success is going to say, or what, I don't know if that's the person reviewing, but, I always ask in advance who's reviewing. I always want to know who's gonna look at the copy so I can anticipate objections the same way that we do like in copy. I'm always trying to think about like, okay, I know that this person really cares about this, and so if I lead with this message, that might throw them off or something. And so maybe I can change the copy, or when I present it, I acknowledge the objection up front and explain why I did
Mm-hmm.
it anyway, whatever it might be. But that stuff is a lot of extra work, as you said, and that you're also getting feedback from more people, and that can be a lot of work. If you get a lot of feedback on your wireframe, um, you know, that can
Yeah.
that can be honestly the I think the most painful moment in the whole business for me is if I get feedback on something I've created that is like there's no good solution. I have to like either write bad copy to make this one stakeholder happy, or just like keep pushing back against someone with like a strong personality. It's like my nightmare. It doesn't happen that
Yeah.
often, but it happens. So I think that's a huge part of what you have to charge extra for is just like they'll find a way to make it more painful for
Yeah.
you. Not because they want to, but just because that's how their organization is set up. And I think if you bake that into the price, then that might be worth it for you. But if you don't bake that into the price, you're going to
It
be
hurts.
unhappy. And it's not unfair to do that because one, it's more work for you. And two, these bigger companies stand to make higher returns for the same amount of
Yeah.
work. If you're working with a startup and you, whatever, double the number of leads they're generating through some channel, that's a lot less money than if you did that for like an enterprise company.
Oh yeah.
It's not, you know, the copy itself isn't what takes extra work. It's just managing the additional, stakeholders. But it's not unethical to charge more for these companies. It's more work and often more value. So
Definitely. Yeah. So, a couple things there. I guess the one is a little trick that I found when I do run into like an enterprise client, or if I get a sense that there's going to be a lot of stakeholders, and I actually get this into the contract so that it's clear. It's all feedback has to flow through my point of contact before I even see it. And so For one, this makes them want to cut some unnecessary people out because now I'm putting the work on their plate, right?
Now it's their problem. Yeah.
Yeah, it's their problem if they want to deal with all the feedback. And two, rather than just have everyone's input from different departments, everyone who's going to want different things, I've got my centralized person who might be like the VP of marketing, and they're going to disregard pretty much anything that goes against what they're trying to do, and which is okay because typically what I'm doing belongs to marketing, and so it should be their say at the end of the day. And so that's one way to end up with a lot less feedback. The other way is, I think we've spoken about this before, quite a while ago, I switched to sending all of my copy, if it's like a web page, in a wireframe in a PDF, because that's far less convenient to comment on than a Google Doc, right? And I'm not trying to get away with anything, but just the nature of a Google Doc, it like asks people to go through and edit it and find flaws. Whereas if it's like
Yeah.
a PDF, it's kind of annoying. And so they still give me feedback, but it's going to be the important pieces of feedback.
Yeah. I do the exact same thing, and it works wonders. I think we could probably do a whole chat on just feedback and how to reduce it. I have a lot of things on that and like a lot of stuff that really works, but that is a huge part of it, especially with these bigger teams, is like, not only does, if you're sharing a wireframe that's, not in an editable format, not only does it create friction for them to make changes, it also just sends a signal of like, okay, this thing's almost finished. Let's just add any feedback for anything that we really need to, like anything that's really important. Whereas with that Google Doc, right, it's an invitation to edit. This thing isn't ready to ship yet. So let's go ahead and mangle it and thrash around and play with it. So yeah,
Definitely.
that's a huge thing.